to thank OpenSSL Foundation for the opportunity. I've been thinking about this particular topic for quite a few months, ever since I contributed to this software acquisition guide. I was one of the contributors along with many others from industries. The purpose for this guide is pretty simple, that you may be building a product or you may be building a piece of software where you have reliance on outside sources, outside vendors to either piece of a component, software component or hardware, whatever it may be, that product may be. So from all those perspectives, that it is important for you to evaluate what the supplier is capable of, what their practices look like, whether or not it aligns with your organizational goal, and not only that, what you are getting out of the supplier in terms of how they build it and how they test it, and also what's embedded in it. So those things are the main primary objectives for this guide. So way back at 2 years ago, soon after COVID, this work started with a work group. It's a consortium of industry members. And then we started looking into this more in the lines of supply chain disruptors. So like, for example, a few examples I can give. You saw that Log4j, SolarWinds, and also this COVID became a big disruptor at a global scale. And after that, what has happened is that it took really a long time for us to restore normalcy in supply chain operations. So supply chain resiliency was one of the main goals for this effort, with leading companies in the industry joining together to create this. So what we have done is we have taken major standards, supply chain security standards like SP 800-161 and also SP 853, which predates to this effort. And also we have taken some pieces of FedRAMP and then merge them into set of controls that you can use it for pretty much auditing any of your suppliers that you may want to engage towards building your product or anything like that. So the level of transparency often, becomes a problem, right? Like, you don't understand what goes on in suppliers' environment in terms of their development practices, how they manage their third parties. Like, because, a given supplier may engage sub-suppliers to build pieces of something, and then based on which that they may be building a product. So a classic example would be contract manufacturers. Let's say now today that you buy a hardware from a commodity manufacturer, and then they engage a bunch of other suppliers to build pieces of equipment or software component that goes into the hardware. And then eventually what you get, you only know the first level of visibility to the immediate supplier with whom you have a contractual obligations. You never know what goes on beyond that level. So the transparency becomes a problem for acquisition staff and also the companies to understand whether or not it meets our expectations in terms of our goal to produce the product. The second problem is procurement team usually lacks the ability to really understand deep enough what the technical expertise they need in terms of assessing the supply chain security issues. It could be vulnerability management, or it could be that they have not performed a certain software development lifecycle activities. So as a result, the type of effort that goes in to produce or develop the component may become questionable in terms of you having to repeat some of those activities in your environment to get a better idea what are the gaps. So the intended audience for this guide is pretty much everybody who is in the business of either dealing with a supplier or supply chain ecosystem, and also the acquisition staff. Enterprise companies, which are pretty much reliant on third-party software or third-party components, those would be the beneficiaries for this. This aligns with software, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, and they have produced two kind of guidances. One is secure by demand, another one is secure by design. The secure by design controls are actually baked into secure development lifecycle. The secure by demand is basically, calls for those controls to be enforced as default in your product. So with these two elements being part of this guide, it gives ample opportunity for you to gauge the suppliers in a level that what you want to assess them for in order to meet your expectations. By providing these recommendations, this actually enables the acquisition staff and also the procurement team to be better positioned to select a vendor who actually meets the organizational goals. So what are the overlapping standards? So I explained already the NIST SP 853, which is also a risk management framework, security privacy controls. That's part of it. And then the FedRAMP, we have borrowed certain controls, and NIST SP 800-161, which is a Scrum, basically what we call as supply chain resource management practices. And then you have way back in EO 14028 in US is a major effort. The previous administration created that executive order based on which the software vendors are expected to follow certain procedures and practices in their environment, especially if they are in the business of supplying software to federal agencies. So this actually spawned multiple different activities, one of which is the NIST SSDF, Secure Software Development Framework, so which is also known as 800-218. So part of the attestation that software vendors have to provide to the government in terms of endorsing that we as a vendor has carried out these activities and we do comply with the practices that are outlined in SSDF. This form actually contains most of the controls that are prescribed in 218, and then so together with this, we merged all these things and built this acquisition guide. So there are important pieces of it in terms of sections. So the way it's written is that it is a conditional based questions, like a survey tool. Like the front end is a governance questions. So if you answer yes to the governance questions, then you may be prompted to go into the different sections like software supply chain related questions and secure software development, and then software deployment, secure software deployment, and vulnerability management related questions. So what it means is that programmatically that you can parse based on your answers, responses you have given, and the different sections you will be prompted to answer. So initially, when we did this work, by the way, I wrote the secure software deployment section. Those questions are primarily my contribution, but there were different contributors for the other areas. Initially, when we built this guide, it was just a simple Word document. Then we came to the conclusion, hey, this is not going to work. Anybody going through this guide and then making sense out of these questions is going to be problematic. Not only that, in order to get the suppliers to answer these questions, it's going to be a humongous amount of effort for them to navigate through this guide and also provide their answers in a way that we can glean on them and also understand what gaps do exist. So we created a spreadsheet for these questions. And then, actually this is coming a little bit premature. This should have been the earlier slide. Anyway, so I will come back to this later. But this is the type of questions you see on the governance section. So I have put some few examples here on the screen. So the front end, this is basically the first section that everybody has to answer. So if you answer yes to one of the questions, then you will be automatically dropping into the subsequent sections to answer more deeper, in-depth level probing exercise for the other questions. And then this is the spreadsheet that accompanies this guide. So the spreadsheet is actually drafted as in different tabs. You see here the sections: supply chain security, secure development, secure deployment, and vulnerability management. So the same way the live spreadsheet, which is on the CISA portal, also actually helps you to navigate through this. That's what I wanted them to show, but apparently that they have some issues with that. And in addition to that, there's an online tool which is very easy for you to use. So this is a more deeper example in terms of how the spreadsheet is organized. This is a governance question. And also you see that estimated burden time for completing it, how long you are supposed to, how long this question is supposed to take for you to give an answer. So that also is given as a guidance so that, eventually, when you roll that up, the entire spreadsheet, you will know how much time you have spent. But I have run through this several times. It doesn't take that long. It's probably 25 minutes for the whole thing, all sections to be completed. Then this is the online tool. So this is a web-based tool. So you see that different sections are organized on the top. None of your data is actually preserved here. It's all temporal. So what you are doing is basically, prompting all those questions in the same way as you see in spreadsheet, and you can enter the response data here. And this tool doesn't save any of the information. But at the end of it, during the session, they complete all the questions when you answer, that you can export it as a spreadsheet or in any other form CSV file, which you can either do it programmatically, in your system, you can import it, or you can ask a vendor, external supplier, to use this tool to give you the data that you need. How this is actually combining secure by design versus secure by demand. So the individual controls that what we have put in this guide is actually maps to the secure by design elements, which actually came out probably 2 years ago. And then after that, there's a companion guidance was put out as secure by demand. What it means, takes some of the controls that were in secure by design and recommends it that those should be in default configuration, those should be enabled. So the guide is basically builds and bakes the elements from both these guidance documents. And I think, okay, you can try now. I think they resolved the problem going back to this. Yeah, so that's the actual tool, web-based tool, what I had a screenshot on. And here you see the tiny little thing, import my guide. You can even import your own guide if you have filled in answers, or import your own response data in CSV or XLS formats. So those are the various sections that the questions are oriented towards. And then eventually, when you fill in all this, that you get a response summary also on the screen, like in terms of how you answered it. Okay, switch back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so can you pull up that secure by demand guide now? Yeah, so scroll down a little bit in this page. Yeah, so this one is having the individual controls that are basically, part of this guidance document. And there's also a YouTube video that you can watch. It's really good, good video. And there's a couple of webinars we did. So that also is available in the same site. Switch back to the PowerPoint. I think that's pretty much. The pledge is, yeah, I forgot to mention about the pledge. There's a group of companies who have pledged that they are actually thriving towards meeting this secure by demand. If your company is interested, you can also do a pledge, and also they report the progress, how you have done. We are one of the pledged companies, in addition to Microsoft, Google, and others, many others. So that's one of the things that actually helps you to have more visibility for your company and things like that. How we use it, this is an important thing, because it's not that we were waiting for this guide to come by. 10 years ago, I started this program called Trusted Supplier Program. When I began this, all I had is only NIST SP 853. So I started drafting controls around how we can map those 853 controls towards auditing our suppliers. Because we one of the organizations that heavily relies on third-party suppliers, especially for software and also hardware, embedded systems as well. So this program is designed to ensure any third-party supplier we engage, we would be primarily having a way to audit their practices, development practices, and also their supply chain security practices in case they have reliance on another third party as well. And then what are the use cases that we primarily accommodate within the scope of Trusted Supplier Program is, those are the ones that I mentioned previously, that use cases. I'll go back to that one now and explain, because that's the one that might be helpful for you to, yeah, this is the one. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you are trying to build a product, and you have software procurement decisions you have to make, and you don't know which vendor to work with. So that would be one use case that primarily could be met with this. And then vendor selection, so you have multitude of vendors, but you don't know who is good or who is bad. So that would be acceptance criteria would be one of the things that you could primarily use this. And then onboarding criteria. So for example, like you eventually made up your mind that you want to work with a vendor, but you wanted to know whether they are meeting X, Y, and Z. And that could be one of the decisions you could make based on how they responded against this software acquisition guide. And then in contract negotiations, that you could bring it in as part of that negotiation arrangement, that these are the requirements that you have to fulfill. And any gaps you have assessed as a result of this, using this guide and also getting the responses from them, those gap items can be put into your contract negotiations as well. And then supply chain risk assessment that you can do as part of your organizational level risk management. And then compliance and certification, that also helps. For example, right, like if you are supplying some kind of software to some of the companies or also federal agencies, that you are required to submit this as part of the requirements as well. So going back here, so the Trusted Supplier Program has been, since inception, that we have audited most of the suppliers whom we do business with, and then we also rate them, rank them, and also give them feedback annual basis. Hey, last year you had 10 gaps, and this year you have improvised. So that they are really, some of them actually like the approach, because they can see improvements and progress made time to time as well. And then when the contract renewal happens, we also include this Trusted Supplier Program components, elements in terms of expectations as well. So it starts with that 5-phase process: initiate, assess, and then monitor periodically, ongoing basis. And then we also resolve the gaps with them. And then finally, the procurement decisions can be made. There are some links I have given here, which is what we were displaying during the course of the presentation. And then the couple of webinars we did earlier for this, and that's YouTube video, and as well as it's available in the CISA site. With that, I'm ready for the questions.
Is this somehow applicable also to European Union schemes and compliance directives and so on?
It will be extremely useful for CRA, but I haven't put in, especially the reporting aspects of the CRA requirements, I haven't included it. That will be one thing that I am going to do the next revision. Thanks for bringing it up. But mostly it covers everything now today what you need, but with the exception of exclusion of CRA. Because we were waiting for 2026, the official this thing. Any other questions? It even has controls about, cryptographic algorithms and transition requirements and everything. So everything is in one place. So I'm pretty sure that you would love it if you take a look at it and see how comprehensive it is. Any other questions? It's quite back there. It's the last day of this conference as well. Okay, I think we are done, looks like.